He'll save every one of us. Here's your look at the new Boss Fight Studio Hero Hacks Flash Gordon. Boss Fight Studios' first item celebrating the 40th anniversary of the 1980 Flash Gordon movie is here, a special 1/18th scale Hero Hacks action figure of the king of the impossible himself. Flash Gordon, as portrayed by Sam J. Jones, is here to save the universe. Flash is clad in his Earth clothes, a stylish ringer t-shirt with red Flash logos, khaki pants, and sneakers. Before we get the review started for Flash Gordon from Boss Fight Studio, I wanted to draw everyone's attention to the way that the figure arrives, specifically the packaging. It's not your, traditional clear clamshell case that we would know by now with the Vitruvian Hacks and Hero Hacks line, but rather instead, Flash Gordon arrives imprisoned inside, you could say, a metal lunch tin. I think that's super cool. It means that not only do you have a figure that's protected inside and you can remove it anytime you want, but then once you have Flash Gordon out and on display, the packaging also can then be displayed as well. For fans of lunch tins, at one point I was really big into collecting metal lunch tins, not so much anymore, but certainly if you are a big fan of lunch tins and would like to have display pieces, I mean, this serves as a great display piece. Like I said, once you get the figure out of the packaging. I want to show you guys certainly the front of the lunch tin, which actually features brand new art from Superstar Comics artist Erica Henderson, who actually has done a fantastic job of kind of giving it a more comic styling of Flash Gordon. And certainly that carries over as well when we look at it from the sides, on both sides. And then it's not until really you spin it around to the back that you're treated to that classic 80s poster artwork featuring Flash Gordon and Ming the Merciless, of course, up the top there. And of course, like every other lunch tin on the market, it does have a serviceable handle, so you can pick it up if you want to. And it does also have the clasp. You just open this up like that, you drop this down, and inside you have your Flash Gordon. Flash Gordon with the makeshift egg football, several different hands, several different swappable heads, and the Hero Hacks display stand. And again, you can't just take this right out and you have yourself a serviceable lunch tin. Although I think in a case like this, I would certainly not recommend using it for lunch. It's too cool of a display piece to want to be showcasing it with a few sandwiches and drink box inside. Flash. Now that we've had a look at the packaging for Flash Gordon, let's first figure out how tall the figure stands. I'd like to thank the folks over at Boss Fight Studio that provided the sample of Flash Gordon that we could have a look at in this review. You'll notice, as I'm displaying him, I have to keep him on a display stand. There's a reasoning for that. So what I am going to do is I'm going to try my best to measure it, not including the display stand. So I'm actually going to take the laser right to the very top of the stand, stop it right there. If I'm reading this correctly, Flash Gordon from Boss Fight Studios stands 4.5 inches in height. We can switch that over to centimeters, revealing that the figure is 11.5 centimeters tall. Quite the team up I'm sure this would be. We'll move over Flash Gordon that we're about to have a look at. And for comparisons, we can bring in the Zorro that we already had a look at. Let's just get his legs to be straight a little bit. Short of the fact, of course, that one is on a display stand, one is not. Kind of gives you a good idea, at least, that all the Hero Hacks and Vitruvian Hacks that we've also had a look at are all scaled appropriately to one another, all sitting around that 4-inch mark. Let's tackle the accessories now that come included with Flash Gordon. I see what I did there. He comes included with a display stand, though through the course of this entire review, you've seen the figure on the stand, and there's a reasoning for that, unfortunately. Let's pick the figure up, and while it may seem like he has generally a pretty secure grip to the actual display stand, it really isn't the case. We're going to go ahead and remove the display stand. I want to show you guys first that. You have the Hero Hacks highly articulated character kit system. Clever the way that they've made that out of hacks. And you can see, in fact, it is the same display stand that came included with Zorro. Just the coloring is different. I'm glad that they chose red. I think the red goes the best with Flash Gordon. I guess they could have used black as well, but red certainly has a lot more pop going for it. 4 pegs placed across the display stand of various lengths. Although unfortunately, the peg length or the peg size of these pegs just are too big for the holes on the undersides of Flash's feet. If you look at the two, and you look at the pegs and you look at the holes, yeah, they're way too big. Now, I have yet to heat the undersides of these feet. I could put them technically in hot water to soften the plastic and then force them down on the pegs. That would increase the size of the holes on the underside. I ended up actually just dremeling a little bit of that extra hole on this foot, just so at least it would attach to the display stand in some way. It's just enough that it seems to stay in place. But if you take this figure stock out of the packaging, unfortunately, it just won't fit to those pegs. So you can either, again, heat the feet up in hot water, soften up that plastic and fit them down, or again, that quick makeshift solution that I end up doing, just dremeling the bottom of one foot, just at least enough that stays in place. Unfortunately, in a case like this, Flash Gordon does require a display stand. Go ahead and take this stand off for the time being. I want to actually show you his feet. While I will say that they're nicely detailed feet, you can see that the shoes, the sneakers, have laces done up at the top. Double bunny ears, I'm sure. The problem with it, though, is that the feet I can't get completely leveled flat. It is contributing to the fact that not only do they sculpted the laces at the top, but also the cuff of the leg drapes further down, so you can't really straighten the feet out. You can bring them down enough, but you can't bring them any further forward because of, again, that cuff on the leg. It just hangs down way too low. It results, unfortunately, in Flash Gordon just not having the means to stand on his own. So again, you will have to rely on the display stand. And again, I would say you probably will want to heat the bottom of the feet or take a hairdryer to it just to soften up those holes to make them a little bit bigger. I'm actually just going to put them back on the display stand for the time being. And like I said, if you just get the hole big enough, even one of the pegs is more than enough to keep the figure in place. Although, like I said, he has some real difficulty standing. I have actually noticed that with many of the Hero Hack figures, or at least the other ones that we've had a look at. They all seem to have really large pegs on their display stands. And the figures up to this point really haven't had an issue standing. In fact, I had the figures all standing on their own by themselves. Flash Gordon is just really the exception to the rule. That being said, let's get a closer look at the other accessories that come included with the figure. Speaking of football, he does come in. Were we speaking of football? Speaking of football, he comes included with that makeshift egg football that he has to, of course, run around Ming's troopers. It's been very nicely painted, both in gold and in this dark green. And you'll probably notice that there's a little hole on the one side. It's not on the other side here. Because he actually does have an extra interchangeable hand that specifically plugs into this place. So you can actually have him holding the football, makeshift football, in his hand. Let me go ahead and show you that right now. He comes also with a couple of closed fists, beelining quickly to the other hands he comes included with. A couple of closed fists, punching fists, dueling it out fists. And then he also comes, like I said, with that grabbing hand for specifically holding the football. You'll see that there's a peg sticking out from his hand. That's got to be painful. And that attaches to the football. To, of course, accomplish this, what we will do is pick the figure back up. On this side, we're going to remove the hand. If you are going to be asking me, by the way, did I end up having to prep this figure ahead of its review? In other words, like, did I have to heat up the joints or anything like that? You could, especially on smaller 3 3/4 inch figures, because they have smaller pegs. If you are somebody that would like to pick these figures up for yourself, you could heat them up with the hairdryer. Or like I said, you could submerge them in hot water. I didn't have any real problems with removing the hands, though, nor did I have really any issues with removing the head or the joints in the figures. So, take that. You can go ahead then and attach the hand. Just wiggle this back into place. I like, by the way, too, I know it's beelining again, I like the fact that the pegs have these little lips to them. It seems to make them a little bit more durable when you're twisting them back into the sockets of the forearms, or, of course, when you are removing it. But anyways, you do have this hand now in place with the big, very noticeable peg. And then you can go ahead and take the hole from the football, makeshift football, and attach it into Flash Gordon's hand like that. Probably going to be the way I'm going to display the figure. He also comes included with some swappable heads as well. Go ahead, put this to the side. We'll just move all the other accessories out of the way. And Flash Gordon does have 3 various different head sculpts, all of which are actually quite good, portraying Sam J. Jones, who of course played Flash Gordon in the 80s movie. It's kind of more of a smiling face on this Flash. And then he has a couple more determined, disgruntled, or just otherwise angry-looking expressions you can go with as well. There's this one. And there's also this one as well. These would be my two favorites of the 3. To remove the heads, all you have to really do is just hold on to the torso and just very carefully pop the head off with the ball joint. I say pop it off with the ball joint because the ball joint will remain inside the head. That's the way it should be. I mentioned this when we had a look at the Zorro hero hacks. I really like the fact that they use pegs on the insides. Each one of the heads basically have its own peg, designated peg. So when you are removing it, you don't have that problem of having then to fish the ball peg out if it has removed from the neck and got lodged inside the head instead. Anyways, you just pop the replacement head in place. There you go. You hear a little bit of a snap. And that's one of the other Flash Gordon head sculpts that come included with the figure. So I think we're going to stick with this head sculpt for the time being as we look at the rest of the figure. Again, though, that's a great looking head sculpt. Spin it around so you can see it all the way from the back as well. Sculpted hair seems to only be painted the one color, but that's more than enough, I think. The blonde coloring is quite good on Flash Gordon. Paint is really clean on this figure. Something consistently I've noticed with all the boss fight releases. Of course, he's got his ringer shirt there with Flash across the front. And we spin it around to the back so you can see there's the lightning bolt. He technically does have a peg hole on the back of his torso, serviceable, I suppose, for backpacks and other things that the Vitruvian hacks would include. But Flash Gordon doesn't come included with like a backpack or anything that attaches to his torso. Paint short for a few little places, like on the top of his collar, is quite clean. A little bit of white there, I guess just not enough paint was applied to it. But again, like the paint is pretty clean on this figure. He does have the wristwatch there on the side, painted nicely in that silver color. A little bit further down. Now this has all the articulation one would come to expect from the Vitruvian and Hero Hacks line. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but quickly looking at his khaki pants. All the way down to pretty much where we started this review, talking about those sneakers. The sneakers are nicely detailed, just again, I wish that they would be able to straighten themselves up. You can see like this one is always on a permanent angle. I don't think there is a way to kind of fix that problem. So of course we will want to make use of the display stand when displaying this Flash Gordon. Okay, so let's have a look at the articulation now on Flash. His head rotates all the way around because of course it did have that ball joint working in its favor. You can have the head looking up and you can have the head looking down. It can also rock back and forth. As for his shoulders hinge out. And again, I just want to say this again, when I picked up this figure, opening it up out of the packaging, all I really did do in early prep for the review was sort of just go like this a little bit with the joints. There was really no resistance. There's really no buildup of paint. There's a few little areas that the paint does flake, but it seems at least to their credit that they're using the same plastic color as the hinge joint. So even if the paint did flake off, you still at least have white joints underneath that. Anyways, you can bring the arms out at a very easy to bend 90-degree angle. You can also rotate the arms all the way around, just a little tighter because unfortunately, you sort of see like right at the top here, the sculpting, I think, of the shoulder, more specifically the sleeve, limits a little bit being able to move the arm all the way around. This arm, I don't think I have as much the issue. You can bring that arm to about there, but it starts to creak and squeak a little bit. So I think that's to the full extent of what I would be able to move the arm at. He does have the bend at the elbow, that hinge joint, which also allows the forearm to swivel back and forth. Flash also does have the hands to be able to swivel all the way around, and they also do have a hinge joint, so technically you can hinge them back and forth like this as well. Upper torso is on a ball joint, though when you are hinging it too far back, you'll see there's a developing gap right there. Just want to make sure you're kind of straightening that torso up a little bit. He does have actually a waist swivel as well. This may have also been the case when we looked at Officer Zed and Zorro, but because of the way that their costume was designed, maybe it was just a little harder to access it. But Flash Gordon does, in fact, have a very accessible swivel in his waist. You can also split the legs out. You can move the legs forward and back. Got a little bit of paint actually flaking off from the sleeve there. Forward and back on the legs. He has a double hinge on the knee. And then again, when we look at the feet, there's just a very mild ankle pivot. You can also move the feet back and forth. But again, I don't want to keep repeating the same thing. I just wish that either the laces were gone, or maybe they had just trimmed back a little bit of that, or they didn't bring the pant leg so far low. Again, in a case like this, Flash Gordon will definitely need a display stand, which I guess also works in his favor as well, because if you're going to have him put in any sort of a dynamic pose, display stand would definitely be afforded, definitely be relied on. And it's nice to see that with both the Vitruvian hacks that we've had a look at and the Hero Hacks line, all these super articulated, detailed figures at least come with their own designated display stand. Boss Fight Studio have presented us with a rather nice looking Flash Gordon in that smaller 4-inch scale. Not everyone's going to be on board collecting 4-inch tall figures, but if you are, certainly so far from what I've seen, both the Hero Hacks and Vitruvian Hack figures have delivered super detailed, nicely painted, and well-articulated figures that you can put up on a display and take up a whole lot less space. Flash Gordon, admittingly, doesn't come with a lot of accessories. Most of them are all more swappable heads and swappable hands. For the things that he actually can hold, the only thing he really has is that egg football that he can carry around in his hand. But at least they include a swappable hand that has that designated peg that can fit into the football so the football isn't going to fall out of his hand. Speaking of designated pegs, I also really like, and something I'm going to reinstate from a previous review of these, is that I like that all the heads have designated pegs. Boy, that's a breath of fresh air, because half the time, if you ever have swappable heads on figures, small or large, usually you have one peg to work with. And a lot of times, 9 times out of 10, I usually find myself having to fish the peg out of the head and have to put it back in the neck before I swap out the heads. You don't have to do that with these figures. All the figures have their own designated pegs. And again, I think that's just those small little details that I really appreciate from this line so far. Like I said, Flash doesn't come with much in the way of accessories really when you exclude the hands as well as the heads. But of course, looking at the tin that he comes included with, just as cool as the figure itself, I love the fact that they include a metal lunchbox like this. But you'll see, of course, on the front of that tin, he is sporting that black and red outfit. I'm sure at some point, Boss Fight Studio is going to give us that look of Flash Gordon. Well, they could just use the same heads, because the heads that they already have for this one are already really good. They just give us a different body. But I'd definitely be interested in getting the black and red version costume that Flash Gordon wears in the movie as well. What do you guys think of this figure? Let me know down below in the comments section. And how cool is it, the fact that Flash Gordon was imprisoned inside a metal lunch tin? I can't even get that out. A big thank you again to the folks over at Boss Fight Studio that provided the sample of Flash Gordon that we could have a look at in this review. If you guys are new to this channel, enjoying all the content you've been seeing, and love the fact that we've been looking at both the Hero Hacks and Vitruvian Hacks, certainly as well hit this video with a like, but make sure as well you're hitting that subscribe button down below, you turn the bell notification on, and that yes, you're coming back, having your intergalactic peepers peeled, because there's definitely going to be a lot more videos coming your way. And as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.